this group, this is essentially the same concept.
Okay. Chairman Kirkpatrick.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Senator, thank you so much for taking the committee's input into consideration and doing the substitute bill. And Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
It is the appropriate time because I don't have to see anybody asking any other questions. So.
Okay, then I move to pass for LC 52001. I think it's a 4. Yes.
0114. Yes.
Okay, we got a second from Vice Chair Walker. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You almost run this committee as good as the last chairman y'all had in here.
Well, I have aspirations of glory, but I never get there.
You keep working at it. It's going to happen for you.
All right.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Hey,
appreciate it.
he's not stupid, is he? All right. Senate Bill 602 is the author here. Oh, there he is. Okay. He had his back to me, so.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
And I think to the previous presenter, I'll say you're the greatest chairman we've ever had in this committee. But good morning, everyone, colleagues. We're here to present Senate Bill 602. This bill aims to bring Georgia's Transportation Network Company insurance code in line with the national TNC insurance model. In 2015, the National Council of Insurance Legislators brokered a grand compromise between the industry and the TNC industry, resulting in the adoption of an NCOIL model bill for TNC insurance requirements. This model has become a standard across the nation for setting the amounts of insurance TNCs are required to provide, and it protects drivers, it protects the public, and it ensures the interests of insurers and TNCs are properly addressed. Currently, Georgia's insurance code requires TNCs provide $1 million in uninsured motorists and underinsured motorist coverage for TNC drivers engaged in TNC service. Current UM and UIM requirements make Georgia an outlier in comparison to our neighboring states, putting our TNC insurance requirements higher than 42 other states and in line with such states such as California, New York, and New Jersey. Under the legislation as it currently exists, and I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, TNC companies would be required to continue to provide the following comprehensive insurance coverage. When the app is on and the TNC driver is waiting for the ride request, the TNCs provide third-party liability insurance for covered accidents if a driver's personal insurance does not apply, which includes $50,000 per person for bodily injury, $100,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $50,000 per accident for property damage. When the app is on, a TNC driver is on the way to pick up a passenger during the ride. TNC provides $1 million for third-party auto liability, death, bodily injury, and property damage. UM and UIM coverage only applies when TNC driver is not at fault. This coverage is incredibly expensive, it's ineffective, and costs millions of dollars a year to provide a gross amount of excess coverage at an amount that is seldom, if ever, used. This bill is presented in the House in line with the National Council of Insurance Legislators' recommended language. However, in this new piece of legislation, we've gone above and beyond with what the national model requires. With the new language included in this legislation, TNCs can provide either $100,000 in uninsured motorist coverage or provide MedPay coverage. MedPay coverage pays out the rider regardless of who's at fault, and requires that no at-fault determination is required by the uninsured motorist coverage. I hope each of you will support this legislation. I also have with me today Megan Sergian Samples, who's the Director of Government Affairs for Lyft, and I'm here to answer any questions, and so is she. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we do have a few questions, and I wasn't here to see which one lit up first, so we're going to go with Mike 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I have a question. So the liability insurance limits on uninsured motorists was set at 1 million in 2015 and 2016 as part of our legislative approval. So what has changed drastically since that time to where we should be changing that amount?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So the Georgia legislation was passed before the national model came out. So the national in-coil model was developed afterwards. We didn't agree to the 1 million back then. This was also, TNCs were a brand new thing. When I was telling you that you were gonna get into a car with a complete stranger, you told me I was crazy. So we agreed to it for a comfort level. And so now that we've been operating in this space for a number of years now, we've had the data to collect and show that the coverage isn't necessary at that limit.
So how is the passenger protected if, let's say their injury is beyond, in most hospital visits now, emergency is beyond 15?
So we're not doing anything to change our general primary liability coverage, which remains at $1 million. And so that is the coverage that in most cases will always kick in and be in place. This UM/UIM requirement is addressing a very, very, very small percentage of claims, and that's when maybe the passenger in the vehicle doesn't have their own personal insurance, because your UM coverage follows you wherever you go. So whether you're in a bus, a taxi cab, a TNC, or a friend's vehicle, it follows along with you. So we're talking about a very, very, very small percentage of people who don't own a car, so they don't have their own insurance. And so we see that less than 5% of any UM/UIM claims would fall under this bucket. So that's what we say, it's very rarely used.
All right, Senator Harbin, you're 9, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, and I'll address this to both of you. I come with about 44 years of experience in the P&C property casualty business. The uninsured motorist issue is an issue not just for uninsured, but underinsured, especially in the state of Georgia, because our current limits are as low as they are. So what I hear you wanting to do is to reduce the current 1 million down to 5,100. Is that what I'm hearing or reading here?
Well, and the bill as it's currently written, it would be 100,000 or 15K in MedPay.
In MedPay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now let me interrupt, because I have been asked to, and I'm in support of an amendment to raise that from 15 to 100,000 for MedPay. So I will be offering that at the appropriate time, which is not out now because we've got so many questions. So.
Okay, and I'm just saying this as being in the business and watching. One of our issues right now is many of our accidents, 25,000, 50, we're currently 25, 50, 25. 25,000 doesn't get you very far on bodily injury. If you're a professional, especially, won't even get you through a couple of months of salary. Even the 25,000 will not cover your car. So I think the underinsured motorist is a very, very critical part of what we're protecting the general public from that standpoint. And I think when they're riding in that car, many times they do not think about where I am from a coverage standpoint. They may be covered personally, but I look at that. And to reduce that, my question is, what type of experience are you seeing in the industry that would justify reducing this down?
We're seeing that the vast majority of our claims fall under $50,000.
And so you want to reduce it from 1 million down to 50, correct?
Ideally.
Okay.
And I don't disagree that, UM and UIM and underinsured and uninsured motorists, is a concern and an issue on the road. What we would ask for is parity. As it currently stands right now in Georgia, TNCs are the only transportation provider that is mandated to have UM/UIM coverage. Taxi cabs, buses, limousines, the shuttle that picks you up from the airport, you as a personal driver, no one else is mandated to have this coverage. So I just want to make sure that we have parity as well, and when we're talking about this, because it makes us a target for litigation when we're the only ones, especially at $1 million, to have this coverage.
I was a part of the committee that originally was granted this to Lyft and Uber, and I felt like that it was a really good thing for y'all. Y'all were trying to get your feet on the ground and run. I don't know that is in the best interest of the general public. That would be just one of my thoughts for that person who's underinsured. If our limits of coverage in Georgia were higher, I think it would be a little bit different, but right now, we have extremely low limits when you look at it from a standpoint and what I see experientially. So that's just my comments and questions. Thank you.
Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is, how many people in the population today use taxis versus Lyft, Uber, and those kinds of, because you're saying you want to be on a level plane. It's rare for me to see a taxi cab anymore. So if you want to continue that kind of service, then in the interest of the public that will access your service, then is it not fair to provide comfort and insurance to those individuals? Because that's a market that you all ask for. You want it to become a part of the industry. Am I right? So in order to serve these individuals and to make them feel comfortable getting into your vehicle, or the vehicles that they get into, would you not want them to feel insured and comfortable? And let's look at the data now. How many taxi cabs are around anymore versus Lyft customers?
I can't speak to the number of how many taxi cabs versus Lyft, but we know that TNCs are on the road more often, and we absolutely do want to provide comfort to the people who use our service, and that's why we have that $1 million general liability policy. No other transportation provider is required to have that much. I think taxi cabs are usually around $250,000. So we are going above and beyond because we feel that our service is used more on the road more, and that's why we agreed to the $1 million general liability policy.
But you
all this
talked
doing
about
is addressing a
your
very, very
model.
small percentage
Senator
of claims.
Sims, just let her finish. I'm sorry.
okay.
Let her finish, and then you can. I'll
We're
allow
just
you to have a
addressing very
follow-up.
small percentage of claims with this, but we're not touching our $1 million general liability policy or anything else. We're only addressing the UIM piece. So I feel we do still provide comfort.
Now, let me ask you guys, because y'all are using insurance jargon that a lot of these people on
Yeah.
this committee don't
I don't know what
understand.
you're
So if
talking
you
about.
would make sure when you say UM, you explain what that is, because not everybody knows what you're talking about.
I apologize. I get a little in the weeds. So yes, I'm only referring to uninsured or underinsured motorists coverage.
Then there was a statement about the individuals, I don't know, no, it was something about they would not know, or how would they know about your services, your insurance? You mentioned something, and I cannot recall it right now.
So our insurance coverage is posted on our website. So if anybody was interested in looking it up, they can do that as well. So they should be.
Okay, we've got several more questions. Senator Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations on capturing the market here in Georgia. You guys have really done a great job with building your business model here, and I can't remember the last time I took a taxi, for example, but I'm looking at this as a physician. I'm thinking about the person in the back seat who might be a senior who doesn't have a car, who might be a college student who doesn't have a car. And if someone causes an accident, or God forbid the driver's the cause of the accident or whatever, and that person in the back seat has multiple trauma, and they go to Kennestone Hospital in my district, I'm not clear that they're really protected from a medical payment standpoint. And I did have two questions. One is that type of coverage expensive? And the other question is, if this were to pass, would any savings be passed along to the consumer? Thank you.
And so I wanted to clarify, which type of coverage are you asking? Are you asking if the UIM coverage that we're currently required to have is expensive? Absolutely. It's costing us, at least Lyft personally, tens of millions of dollars a year to provide a coverage here that is if ever, very rarely used. So it's very cost burdensome for us. It limits our abilities to expand business in the state of Georgia, and has. And absolutely, if we were able to pass this legislation, we would see a cost savings passed on to the consumer. I can tell you personally, when I flew in here last night, my Lyft ride from the airport was close to $100 to get to my hotel, and it's because Georgia is one of the most expensive states for us to operate in because of this insurance requirement.
Would have been an option too.
All right, now we've got this board lit up. We've got another bill to do. We have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. Now, I know everybody wants to, have their say, but I'm going to ask you guys to please remember you have a ability to vote no on this bill if you don't like it. And I would ask my members to be very, 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 very brief. So, Senator Robinson, I'm not speaking at you. You've had your light lit up a long time ago. So,
Chairman. Ma'am, you used a word a while ago, parity, and which is an extremely important word when we start talking about that. And Senator Sims was discussing the taxi cab industry. Is this the only area where y'all do not have parity with the cab industry? And please, in your answer, I'm the founding member of AAAA, which is Angry Americans Against Acronyms. So if you could do me the favor and use law enforcement language, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, the vast majority of the states follow the in-coil model. We only have about 9 other markets that require $1 million or more of UM/UIM.
My question is this the only area where you do not have parity with the taxi cab industry?
No. So an example would be California. We don't have parity. We're required to have this $1 million, and taxi cabs are not. New York would be another example. We're required to have over $1 million of UM/UIM, and taxi cabs are not.
Is this the only thing in the state of Georgia that you do not have parity with the taxi cab industry, or background checks and everything else done on drivers? Are they exactly the same with cabs and others?
We're regulated slightly differently, but we're required to have background checks and the sort.
But
just
slightly
like the other
differently,
transportation.
correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Senator Harbison, I know you're going to be brief.
Exceedingly. One question I had was mandates. We all under mandates or requirements when you get your license in all phases of our life. But my question is, you mentioned something about when a person to use their own insurance when they're involved in an incident or something like that. Why should I do that if I'm the customer? What kind of, I use my own insurance as opposed to you covering me or your company covering me? Did I misunderstand that?
No, you didn't misunderstand that, but that's what happens with insurance policies no matter what type of vehicle that you get into. So whether you're getting into a TNC, whether you're getting into a friend's car, whether you're riding on public transportation, your personal insurance follows with you.
What is TNT, Turner Network Television?
Transportation Network Company,
Okay,
rideshare.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got one more person signed up to testify. If y'all would step back for just a minute. And I know we have a professional witness here today, so I know he's going to be brief. So.
Thank you,
Dan
Mr.
Snipes.
Chairman.
Yep.
I'm Dan Snipes. I'm an attorney in Statesboro. I'm a past president of Georgia Trial Lawyers Association and still do work for them at the Capitol. I want to be brief, but I also want to make sure people understand what uninsured motorist coverage means in Georgia. And I know that Senator Harbin and Senator Walker know because they deal with it all the time. But this is the insurance we're talking about, that if you're a passenger in the back of a rideshare and someone hits you from behind, for instance, and for whatever reason they're uninsured, and OCGA 33711 defines uninsured in Georgia as meaning different things. One, it can be the person has no insurance at all. Two, as Senator Harbin mentioned, they could just have minimum limits and those limits get exhausted and then they become uninsured. Or it could be in some circumstances where the insurance just doesn't apply because of immunity or something like that. But to start with, we're talking about a situation where, for me to give an example, you're the passenger in the back and you get rear-ended by someone that's uninsured, and then this is the insurance that would apply. Now, as Senator Harbison, I think, was asking about, if you have your own vehicle, and you have coverage, that goes with you, and that's the primary policy. And this would be the secondary level of coverage. However, in metro areas like Atlanta, where you have a lot of elderly people, you have disabled people, you have college students, you may have a lot of people that rely on ride shares who don't have another vehicle, and this would be the only level of coverage that's available to them. When the rideshare industry started and the transportation network companies wanted to enter the market, they chose to enter markets like Georgia and California and New York where there were people. They didn't go to South Dakota, they didn't go to Nebraska, they came to places where there's going to be a demand for rideshare services. And when they sat down with legislatures, they agreed to $1 million liability and $1 million in order to start doing business in this state. As Senator Sims pointed out, they're killing cabs. You can't find a cab anymore. They're doing a great job. To answer one of Senator Robertson's questions, though, there's not complete parity between limousines and cabs and rideshare companies. OCJ 41151 requires a special registration with the Department of Public Safety for limousine services. OCJ 40-11931 requires registration of taxi companies. And then they provide an opt-out where local governments can require additional insurance on taxi companies in order to operate in a municipality. There's not the same type of registration requirement for drivers of rideshare companies because the drivers come and go more. So there are differences. Another difference, particularly with limousine companies, if you get a ride with Carry Limousine, there's vicarious liability against Carry Limousine. Their drivers are employees, they're not independent contractors, and you have a right of action against the company. You don't have that with Uber and Lyft. To be brief. Lastly, though, in regard to what insurance costs, liability insurance is expensive, but relative to liability, uninsured motorist coverage is inexpensive. You see that when you get your premiums for your own automobile policy. If you have coverage, it's much, much less than liability. What you're being asked to do is to take away a benefit for Georgia citizens who are injured and to reward California corporations that are already making a lot of money. If they weren't making a lot of money, this service wouldn't be doing as well. So you're being asked to make a policy decision between continuing to protect Georgia citizens or protect California corporations. I'd ask you to vote against it. Thank you.
All right, we got one quick question, and
Yes, ma'am.
I mean quick.
This is quick. So do you have any information on what percentage of drivers in Georgia are uninsured?
Recently, WSB did a report on it, but their report was roughly 15% of Georgians don't have any insurance. Based on my experience practicing law for 26 years in this state, particularly with the number of migrant and illegal workers we have in rural Georgia, I would say it may be greater than that at times.
All right, we're going to discuss this amendment, and now I see my vice chair's got an itchy finger, but let me explain this amendment. On page 2 of the bill, line 27, starting with the letters, the word if. So basically you would delete that last sentence, and the effect of that would be that $100,000 minimum on the med pay would be required. The medical payment coverage would be $100,000. So we'd be eliminating that last sentence. 27, line 27 on my bill.
What changes, Chairman?
We're deleting the last sentence. Basically, that gives the transportation network company an option to reject uninsured and underinsured. We're eliminating that, so that means in effect that they would have to have 100,000 instead of the 15,000. And I am making that in the form of a motion. So, do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Chairman Watson. Any further discussion?
Let me just clear.
Yeah.
All right. Just so I can clarify what I just seconded. So we're leaving off on line 27 where it starts with if, and that sentence completely, and that bumps it up from 15,000 up to 100,000.
Yes, that is the
Okay, I just want to be clear. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand until my assistant nods. 1, 2, 3, Those against, please raise your hand. All right. Clearly fails. All right. The Chairman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I appreciate you bringing this issue. I think it's something that requires further discussion. I'd like to see really actual data on how many claims they have over, you know, that are over 50,000 versus, and how many are over 100,000. I think this needs more work before it can get support. So I move we table the bill.
I'm sorry, my mic was off. The motion passes to table the bill. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Well, where's my bill? Does everybody have it?
All right. Last bill for this morning is Senate Bill 605, brought to us by Senator Burke. And there's should be a committee sub in the folder. It's, so we're working off of, well, I don't know that I have that. LC 365252S. All right, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was brought to my attention by a couple of board members of a large nonprofit in Metro Atlanta. They had an issue with their unemployment coverage not paying their unemployment claims during the pandemic. And as all of you know, the last several years, the need for support services in our communities has never been higher. So this nonprofit has ended up with a unemployment owed to the state of $1 million, and the code contemplates in some places that these payments could be done over time, but they've not been able to arrange that. So this bill basically allows them to pay their the money they owe the state over 3 years. So it doesn't get rid of any of their liabilities, but it does allow them to do that over time, which my understanding will allow them to continue the types of services that they provide to the community. Otherwise, they probably would have to minimize services and eliminate some employees. So I'd be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions? All right, we got a motion move to pass from Senator Lucas and second by Senator Kirkpatrick. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, I don't think there's any opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. I know there's some folks here to testify, but I think they'll be grateful with a little Christmas present. So.
We'll tell you how great you are.
Thank you. All right, I'll turn it back over.
Mr. Chairman, just one brief comment.
Wait a minute, if you're going to comment, go to the microphone. I am going to recognize you because we do have a couple of minutes I'm giving back to these folks today. So
I just wanted to say thank you to you particularly. I know that the Metro Atlanta YMCA's don't serve Bainbridge, Georgia, and this is a good bill that's going to help some kids that need it, and really just appreciate you taking time to reach far outside your district and do something good for some folks, so thank you.
thank you. We remind everybody we do have a meeting at 1 unless the floor votes or delay us, and I think we'll have 3 more bills that are be active on the agenda. So look at your agendas and review those bills carefully so we can be as prompt as we were today in working through these issues. So thank you all for your attention, and we are adjourned.